So welcome to our review of Xtra Insider 2020. We've got a panel of faces here who you will have seen over the years, but not otherwise, I suppose, for a little while. So a couple new voices for you to review what we've looked at as our surprises for the 2020 Eurovision Song Contest season. This is our way of celebrating some of these entries and picking out what we think could have been a surprise, but also maybe what was a surprise as a shock for us as well. So we'll go into 8 entries from this year's cohort, and we'll tell you what we think about the overall views of ESCXTRA. So, our first one on our lovely little list is Latvia. Now, we've chosen this not just because it would have closed semi-final 2, but for an entry that was received quite marmite by fans throughout the Eurovision season. ESCXTRA's opinions seem to marry up fairly well. And like me, who very much loves Samantha Tina, you know, she is a composer, and I'm very proud of her for that. Matt, you also are a Latvia fan this year, aren't you?
I am, yeah. I think I don't know why I am actually, because everything about the song should annoy me based on on my past likes. But it's something about her. She just intrigues me as a person, as an artist. She's bonkers in the best way. Um, Obviously we got to cover her a bit. She did appeared at the national final in Lithuania, which we covered.
Yeah.
And we got to interview her, and she's nuts, and she knows it. She really plays to it. So I love, as her, she's great. The song is one of those songs which initially I love. Now the passage of time has it's kind of got a bit jaded, because it's got that sort of sound that after you've heard it, you got it, right? You know.
Yeah.
So, but I'm going to judge this as anybody else would at Eurovision, and that is most of the people will hear this once, maybe twice, and a few recaps, right? So that's what I'm judging it on. This will have impact, or would have had impact, and I think she delivers it. We've seen it do it live. She does it flawlessly, and I just think it would have got people talking. So I'm a fan of it as a Eurovision entry for sure. I think the song is memorable.
Overwhelmingly, of people that went to Sweden, we had very similar feedback. I think a lot of people commented on social about how popular Samantha Tina was as a performer and as a human being. So I think it's a real shame for her, particularly with this entry that I think you're right, Matt. It's very impactful. And on the first time of listen, whilst it might be Marmite, you are going to remember it. And of course, the worst thing possible at Eurovision is to be unmemorable. So I think she nailed that one. We'll just briefly move on to Sweden. And this would have been our semi-final 1 opener. I think this one is a worthy opener, and I don't think anyone was surprised when we found out that this would have opened the show. But Nick, this is one for your list, isn't it, here, where you've been surprised?
Yeah, I mean, in the past couple of years, I've never been a big fan of Sweden at all. And when the show went on this year and we saw Dotter as the favorite, I was like, why? Pretentious pop yet again? Unpopular opinion here, but yeah. And then I saw that feel-good song, and I was like, okay, if Sweden have the balls to do that, I'd be really happy. And as soon as it got selected, they sort of started dropping with the bookies, and the fans were, Sweden 7th, 8th, something like that. And then I saw our Xtra Insider, I saw it top the list, and I was like, okay, so all of a sudden we've decided we love it. I've seen people suggesting it could be a non-qualifier, but in my book, I think Sweden would have been the big feel-good song of the night, and I see it as a potential televote winner for the entire contest, the final. I'm not sure what juries would have done, but I had it as a potential winner, and I was surprised to see it top our list. And at the same time, I was like, we got it right this time. So yeah, I'm all for Sweden, and I love what we did there and what Sweden have tried to do.
I think it's one of those entries, isn't it, where I've not played that. I've played that to a few people, and I've not had a negative response to it. I think it is feel good, and I think you've touched on the exact reason as to why it performed well across our board. So that's my kind of thoughts. I fully agree with you on Sweden. Again, I suppose to you, Matt, on this one. Sweden as kind of as a soul pop song, that works at Eurovision, doesn't it? You know, giving something a bit different that's not generic, I suppose.
Yeah, we talk about authenticity all the time in the Euroverse. We talk about, you know, if an artist comes and it's authentic, people get it. And with a song like Move, it's about drawing you in. It is about empowerment. And I think, yeah, I think I agree there with Nick. I think it would have been better than most people think, in the way that it did with Melody Festival. And people didn't have it as the winner. It went first, you know. It had everything against it, and yet it won. And I feel like it would have done exactly the same at Eurovision. I played it to my work colleagues, and they were like, "This is amazing! What? This is Eurovision song?" I was like, "Yeah, it's a good song." So, yeah, I think it would have done well.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. Talking of doing well, it's almost as if we planned this. So smoothly moving on to what would have been termed one of the bookies' favourites, Bulgaria, who have, without any shadow of a doubt, electrified the competition since their return in 2016 with Polygenova Mark II. You know, Equinox was a grand project led by one of the most famous female soloists in the country. So, you know, they really have pulled out the stops in terms of name recognition, but also in terms of songwriting power. But this one, certainly co-written by the artist and created with Victoria firmly in mind, as she was at the helm of this.
Okay, with Bulgaria and Victoria, I think what worked well for her is that the fact that she hasn't released much music per se. She's only had one single prior to being announced as a Eurovision artist. She knows what works for her, and she knows what style is suitable for her voice. And the fact that Tears Getting Sober was an authentic entry, and it kind of relates to what what the younger generation of the world is going through right now, and the message of it. I think that's what works well with all of the listeners, and I think that's what kind of put Bulgaria at the top of the booking odds before the unfortunate thing happened.
Yeah, and I think you're not wrong there. We've got an artist who actually, if you go back and delve into her X Factor history, we've seen her cover a wide range of songs, but also really know what is her strengths and received, you know, positive feedback in that kind of realm that she operates in now. It'll be interesting to see, as we know she's coming back next year, it'll be interesting to see what direction they take and also how she evolves over a year. She's an artist that we might actually see a further development from next year, in the same way that we might also see a further development from Roxanne and John's Tears, as young artists who have a limited music release, but certainly have an identity in mind. Just quickly for you, Matt, on Bulgaria, and I will come to you, Nick, as well on this one. Bulgaria is one of those nations that have got it right, haven't they?
You mean to this year or generally?
In general.
Yeah, in general, every year you've got people in that delegation who understand Eurovision, understand what they need to do, and then carry out that vision. So they're very clear at the start of the project, whenever that is, and then they carry it out. And I think that can't be said for all delegations. So they get it. They get Eurovision, and they get what they're about and what they should be doing.
Absolutely. And Nick, we know that Bulgaria are using Eurovision to try and launch an artist rather than have success at the competition. It's their primary goal to make sure their artists come out of the competition not just on firm ground, but really elevated.
Yeah, that's exactly what they're trying to do. At the same time, they do have the competition in mind. I mean, you're not going to stick with the same songwriting team for the past few years if you're not interested in a competition. And I would really compare them to the United Kingdom in the late 80s and early 90s, like constantly at the top, but never quite there. That's also the feeling I had with Bulgaria this year. Once again, probably a solid top 10. Winning, not quite sure, but that's not what Victoria was there for. I mean, every artist wants to win, but I think she had a battle on her hands when Roxanne was announced for Romania, and she won that fair and square. And I think she could have built an international career out of this, and I hope she does next year. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. the polar opposite of a bookie's favourite now, and we're going to come to Poland. Something that it was an unusual selection process because they reverted to a selection that has been so wildly successful for a junior competition in terms of finding a new artist and a new star. That's not to say Alicia won't be a star, but Poland's entry this year on Xtra Insider, you've been a bit surprised, haven't you, with the kind of scores and the feeling on this one?
I think for me, it's what I'm seeing on it is that Alicia's got the voice. I'm not captivated by what she's trying to do. That was the main issue with the song. And that's why I had a feeling it was a mixed bag. Because I know she can perform it. We know that she's got the vocals for it. But it didn't do anything. It didn't captivate me within that 3 minutes. And on Eurovision, you need to be captivating and memorable. But on this instance, unfortunately, it didn't happen.
Yeah, and I mean, the scores that we've got, I think, do accurately reflect. It's interesting because we're not a jury, we're also not a televote. But what we do, I think, come up with Xtra Insider each year is this kind of solid reaction to a feeling, because we have a really strong demographic of individuals as part of the team. We cover a lot of ages, we cover a lot of backgrounds, and we also cover a fair chunk of Europe's geography in certain places. And I think that this performing this kind of sliding by the by is probably an accurate reflection of what might have happened at Eurovision this year. Again, like Tim says, it's not to say Alicia can't sing, but perhaps the song got lost in a mix of better ballads. It wasn't the only ballad this year. We did have a bit of ballad fatigue, and I think by the time you rolled around to Poland, it possibly did go by the by. So it's a shock, really, that our votes reflected the bookies' unlikeliness of Albania, of Poland. It's almost as if I've read ahead. We are going to Albania now because we talked about, I suppose, split opinion kind of widely. But this is certainly one that did split opinion. Arilena Ari, you were either part of Team Arilena or you weren't. And that mainly came down to Alvana and the Metana story that never was. But I think it's also important to highlight that we now know this week from our interview with John's Tears that he was asked to participate Festivali Ikungus. So it's not like Albania don't have their heads screwed on right. It's not like they don't know what they're doing. They are now in a position where they're attracting big talent. You look at last year, Unida Malici is not a small name, a huge influencer in the area and in the country that they brought with a brilliant song and a brilliant reconstruction. Arilena's revamp massively helped it. But it really did split opinion with our voters. And I think I'm going to come to you on this one, Nick.
Right, I'm going to say this without being harsh. I'm not. In the past 2 years, we've seen Eugen Pushpepa and Unida Malici for Albania win the national selection with a perfect song in Albanian, keep it in Albanian, go to Eurovision, make the final and impress Europe. But somehow Albania this year once again made the decision to do what they did with Hersi in 2014, Enida Tarifa in 2016, and take a haunting ballad in Albanian, which was kind of mysterious and fun in a way, and then put an English version over it that just made me go, I've lost interest now. Albania are good when they do Albanian. That's what they're good at. I mean, Rona Nishliu, Unida Malicia, Eugen Pushpepa, what do the three have in common? They sang in Albanian and didn't butcher their song after the national selection. And I sort of feel that when Albania do what they're good at, they're also widely appreciated. And had they chosen Elvana this year, well, it would have been an even bigger mistake to turn that into an English song. I can tell you that. So I'm sort of happy they didn't do that. I mean, the same with John. I sort of have the feeling that had he taken part and then won, they would have made him change his song into English. And Can I just call Albania here and ask you to stop translating your songs? Just don't do it anymore, please. Stop it.
It's interesting because the other one that you didn't mention there was Alta Boca, who also sang in Albanian in Serbia on what I would not call friendly territory in 2008, and qualified to the grand final and, you know, performed well. The only time it's worked in English is El Haida Dani, when it never existed in Albanian. And they actually came with a specifically constructed English pop song for Eurovision. Matt, on Albania, split opinion.
Yeah, I marked it quite highly actually on the Insider scores because why did I? Because I thought it. Well, I think I might have marked it actually before the revamp, before the English revamp. Now it is worth pointing out, it's not been said yet, but it was originally written in English,
Yes.
turned to Albanian, and then turned back to English. There's something in that, but also it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, the better version was the Albanian version, without doubt. It's disappointing that I kind of feel like it might have been like they lost their bottle a little bit, because it's a beautiful song, and it you know, it did beat Mitana, you know, the other big song from, and Iran's a big star in Albania as well.
Yeah.
So it got there on merit in Albanian. It's a bit disappointing, but I still think even with the revamp, it's a good solid entry. It's a shame they just changed it.
We won't discuss that Elvana won all the international jurors' votes, and therefore, when you come to convincing an international audience as to which entry you should have sent, perhaps Albania might next year, let's say, not have an equal jury, international and national, and maybe add yourself a fourth international juror to split your tie. That might be the wisest approach, Albania. But certainly, Metanar, I agree, shouldn't have been translated. And we're right in thinking that certainly wouldn't have split opinion with Eurovision fans. On that note, I've played Metanar to a number of people who all go, "Oh my God, this didn't win," and I think that is sometimes one of the biggest shocks, is if you can show a local, show a member of the public a Eurovision entry that wasn't. You know, you could do the same, I think, with some people. I know Nick said this about Dotta, but I think you could do the same with Dotta with a number of people, and they'd go, "Wow, that's possible at Eurovision," you know, and that's it. You need more entries like that, I think, personally, my opinion. Talking of split opinions, we're going to move to the United Kingdom now. We do have a 3-1 split on this one, just in general, because there's three British-based individuals lovingly on this. So Nick, you know, prepare yourself. The United Kingdom made a wholly positive move this year for the BBC to go to a record label who have, what's a music publishing label, really, isn't it, BMG? Artists obviously are signed to real record labels who actually put the music out, but the publishing house who helps create the songs and helps basically license them is where BMG came in. So with the BBC, they found themselves a song that was not written for Eurovision at all, and that's a real positive step. That's number one. But positive step number two is that what the United Kingdom produced this year was a song that was really fitting with an artist. It was, the artist had creative control over the song and actually got something that they could take to a stage and perform it, something that they believed in, and something that, you know, I suppose we've not seen for a while. This is the kind of song that James Newman can tour. It's the kind of song that he's going to put in his set list, and it's not going to be binned off because it's got the E word attached to it, which has happened in the United Kingdom. So for that, it's a very positive move. However, the United Kingdom's eventually split opinion. I'm on the side that the song isn't a very good Eurovision entry, and on that note, it's because it's not going to be your favourite. And your problem is at Eurovision, you need to not just impress a professional jury who get the opportunity to rank from 1 to 26. They get the opportunity to physically say, that's in the middle of my pack. And if enough people put it in 11th place, it will score points on a professional jury, because that's the way the system works. It's you know, a cumulative average score. But the televote don't do that. You vote 3 times. Well, no, you might vote 20 times, but you'll split them over a maximum of 3 countries, probably on average. And because of that, if you're not in the top 3 of a televoter, you're not going to score very well on a televote. And that's where the United Kingdom still consistently falls down, is finding a song that is a nice song. It's a very pleasant song. And I would call this entry from the UK the Joe and Jake feeling. Something that was going to end mid-table, very much on the left-hand side of the board for a good portion of a jury vote, and then, slip away into a solid 15th, 16th place. But when the televote comes in, you're going to be 3 from the bottom, 4 from the bottom, because you haven't got that overwhelming support by any section of any fan base, unfortunately. And that's where I think the UK do need to go. Now, Matt, I know, of course, you went to the announcement of this act for the United Kingdom this year for us. And, it's not a bad entry at all, is it, by any means?
No, it's not. And it's worth bearing in mind that the launch of the song was very much like it would be in the music industry in the UK. There was a handful of Eurovision people there who I recognised, but there were big media there, industry professionals from BMG. It was a big deal. It was a single release, but it had the Eurovision attached to it. Now, yes, I agree with everything you said. I think we would have come like 16th to 20th this year. It would have been another disappointing year for the UK. However, in previous years, when you boil down, get rid of all the fluff and get rid of all the talk and the PR and everything, if you boil down UK entries, you're left with nothing. This year, you had something at its core. James as an artist, and the song, was better than in recent years. There was something still left after you stripped away all the, we're going to do great. All of that's gone. There is still something there. And I think that's where the positivity for me comes in as a UK fan, because they just need to carry on doing this. BMG take Eurovision seriously. That was the message they wanted to give us at this launch event, but I kind of believe it. I think they genuinely want to grab an artist and do well at Eurovision, and then get the single out and get some sales after Eurovision. I think they see a nice a middle ground where everyone's happy.
Yeah, I think that's a really good assessment. Nick, as the non-Brit in the square of the room here, what was your opinion as an outsider?
On one hand, I think the UK actually managed to select a decent entry. However, and that's the point I've been seeing with UK entries in the past 6-7 years, I guess. You can have a good song, but you need to actually have a song you can stage. And Lucy Jones managed to sort of get that done. I mean, there was something there to see, but I just didn't have that feeling with James Newman. I mean, I love the song. I actually had a top 10 for myself, so I love it. But when I listened to it, I mean, last year with Arcade and songs even like Slow Down for my own country, the Netherlands, I was like, okay, well, you know how you're going to stage this. I have no idea what they would have done with this one. And I sort of, when I tried to see what the staging could have been like, I sort of saw Michael Rice all over again. I mean, I'm a big lad myself, so I can say it, a big lad standing in the middle of a stage with a couple of backing vocals in white suits going, my last breath. I mean, what you say, I think is right. I think many juries would have had it 8th, 9th, some juries 3rd, 4th. And then televoting, nah. Sorry, UK, no points, 0 points, something like that. And that's painful, but that's I fear that was what was going to happen, and James wouldn't have deserved that at all. And
the worst part of that, and almost the best part of it not taking place at all this year, is the B word cannot be at all contributed towards a poor vote for the United Kingdom. Genuinely, we'll come out of this next year. Everyone will have forgotten that word exists when it comes to a Eurovision vote, and as long as we put up an entry that can actually motivate someone to vote for it, we will bin that rumour very, very fast. and that's all I'm asking for. Moving on to something that is wholly positive, and really that was reflected in the Xtra Insider scores, but it's also been reflected in general commentary online, and certainly with the bookies, it's not been in a bad position at all throughout since the moment this song first hit the stage in a national final. Of course, we're talking about Ulrika and Norway. Attention is one of the ballads that, believe it or not, grasped the attention this year. With so many of them, it was quite difficult to do that. And yet, Ulrika still, to this day, sits in my top 3, untouched. You know, it sits alongside John's Tears because they are wholly very different constructs and wholly different emotions and feelings. But Ulrika, I think she got everybody. And this, for me, and I think the reason why this has performed so well across the board is that you get it, you feel it. She is such a talented performer that she has taken a song that could be sung by many, many people. But what she does with that song and the way she tells the story, that's half of Eurovision in a nutshell, is actually progressing a story further on. Now, I know that that within the team, Norway was scored well, but I am going to come just back to Nick on this one, just briefly. Norway. That Melody Grand Prix was different this year. We had 25 songs over a 6-week procedure.
Yeah,
I think that's right. And yet we still ended up with the right song winning.
I don't know.
Are you going to say Rain Alexander? Because you're not going to say Rayleigh. I know you too well.
I think I would have said Tone Dumley.
Okay.
But then again, just to Ulrika now, it's a ballad, and that's where my comment really ends for that one. It does not grasp my attention at all. I mean, she can sing, yes, the song is well constructed, yes, but that's exactly the problem. It's constructed. She put out a video just the other day where she sort of filmed herself hearing the news that Eurovision was cancelled. And I saw pure and raw emotion when she started crying. And I was like, that's what you should have done when you were singing that song. I think Matt earlier spoke about authenticity when, being authentic when you sing a song at Eurovision and the audience understanding that you're authentic and you actually feel what you're singing about. I did not have that feeling with Ulrika at all. So I was surprised at its support. I mean, I know you too well as well, and I am baffled it's in your top 3. I would have guessed bottom 3 at all, something like that, not top 3. It's a good construct. Let's just keep it at that. They constructed a good song.
And we're going to move on to something very quickly at the end here that is the total opposite to this. So where Norway's remained very positive throughout this whole procedure and didn't really drop off the face of the earth at all, something has been growing in support, both with grassroots, but also across the continent, to the point where we might be sitting back in a Eurovision press centre today and saying, oh my God, that might do it tomorrow night. And this, I say tomorrow night, tonight, but Italy, building in the last week, building over the last few months, particularly domestically in Italy. Nick, I know this one's quite, key for you here.
Yeah. Normally I follow Sanremo from the first to the last night. This year I didn't. And when it was selected, I woke up on the Sunday after Sanremo and I saw Deodato has won, and I was like, huh? What? Okay, that's a surprising choice, Italy. A bold choice. And I listened to it and I was like, okay, that's just what Italy do. Solid left-hand side of the board, bottom of the left-hand side board this time, I guess. It's once again a rather shouty male with a desperate ballad. A bit like Fabrizio Moro a couple of years ago, like also that desperate voice in it. And then people started singing it on balconies during the COVID-19 crisis in Italy. We saw the video of him performing it in some places, And all of a sudden, it's been winning votes here and there. You know, these preview shows, but also fan votings. And I personally think it might have won the jury vote at the Eurovision Song Contest. Not sure about televote support. I mean, bring the story with it, you know, and you could have done something, but it's been building momentum. And normally we see countries building momentum after the rehearsals. I mean, who can forget Calm After the Storm and Fuego? That's the two prime examples. And I think Italy could have done that this year. I really do. Yeah.
I think it's well worth mentioning, and I'm going to come to both Matt and Tim on this just to round this one off. That performance at the Arena di Verona that is going to be part of Eurovision Song Celebration, but has been trailed by Rai this week following Diodato's press conference. That really shows you quite the power that song has, because even in an empty arena, there is something emotive to it, isn't there, Matt?
Yeah, completely. I came to it late, I would say. I watched it win Sanremo and thought, good song. I do remember that one from the sea of songs, but it's really grown on me. And I think you're bang on there, Nick, with your comment about it. We would have hit rehearsals. Now we know Italy hit and miss when it comes to staging, but it would have hit rehearsals, and I think it would have been done a Fuego and everyone gone, oh my god, you know, upset the apple cart. There you go. There's an entry that's now going to knock, you know, Bulgaria or Iceland off the top of its perch. I think it would have built on that momentum, and we would be here waiting for the final to take place and go, who knows? Because it's a bit of a dark horse. Beautiful song, beautiful vocal, very well constructed song. When you go back and look at the lyrics, as Italy always do, beautiful lyrics, gorgeous song. Dark horse.
I think it's really difficult to disagree with you, because you're right. It could have been that moment. It could have been that press center moment where jaws drop and money starts getting thrown across the room rather rapidly, as in Fuego's case. Tim, just to round this one off, Italy for you, is it a shock that it performed so well across the board, or did you expect that with Xtra Insider?
I think looking at it, let's start with personally percents. For me, I didn't get it at the beginning. I was in that majority boat where I listened to the studio. It does nothing for me. I think it was one of those tracks where you need to hear it live, and that the live performance just elevates it, and that's where it pierces you right there in your emotional nerve. And I'm not surprised, because there's some artists who you think they'll just be on par with the studio, but then there's some who are like, you can improve it with the live, because it's a song that it has to be performed live and it has to be felt live there and then. So I'm not surprised it did well.
Yeah, I think you've touched on it there. Also, I felt the exact same way. Diodato in studio was not for me whatsoever. But when you see it live, it's a totally different feeling. And that is one of those, we talk about elevation and something for me that Norway did. Well, that is something that Italy, I think, has done for every person across the board, is that this live construct has really pushed it on. So, you know, this is a great way of being able to at least celebrate all of this year's cohort. You know, they're not going to be forgotten. And we made sure of that with Xtra Insider, and made sure that they still got their airtime and that they got the time they deserve. That's exactly what Eurovision Song Celebration is going to do tonight. If you're watching this after Saturday, then too late. But the point stands that these entries are due to be celebrated, and we hope that people just keep listening to them and keep supporting the artists over the next 12 months, whether or not they go back to Eurovision next year. That is each delegation's choice, and sometimes for delegations, I've said this before and I'm going to repeat it, sometimes for delegations you have a bigger picture to play. Sweden cannot cancel Melodifestivalen because it is 80% of the viewing audience at times in Sweden that watch it. Unfortunately, that's the scenario that many broadcasters are going to face next year. It is not unique to Sweden. It will happen in many nations. Try not to be too angry at a broadcaster who has to put its own output first over a pan-European competition that, regardless, is only, to them, 3 programs. So that in itself is a lovely roundup as to why Xtra Insider has gone through all the ups and downs this year with our scoreboard. You can go to the ESCXTRA website and actually see the full scoreboard in full. All entries have now been rated and ranked, so they're all there for you to see and to click into and read what our opinions are. But nonetheless, if you've liked this video, do give us a subscribe and a thumbs up. Leave your comments below. It would be great to hear what you think about these 8. Are they shocks to you? Or were you pleasantly, I suppose, pleasantly surprised by our kind of thoughts across the board on this year's Xtra Insider? But from us, that is all for the Xtra Insider 2020 season, but I'm sure we'll be back next year with something just as good for you all. So for now, just make sure you have pushed the bell button for notifications when we upload a new video, and make sure that you follow us on ESCXTRA on all channels: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and of course YouTube. But for now, goodbye. Thank you.